are listening to Happy Hour Hustle, a bi-weekly podcast featuring the musings and witty remarks of the one and only Kim Bode. We can promise at least 2 terrible jokes out of Kim and at least 10 minutes of incredible thought leadership from some amazing and influential guests. So grab a glass of iced red wine and join us for a wild ride. Here's Kim.
Heyo! I'm trying to come up with different intros when we do this, because just welcome to another edition of the Happy Hour Hustle just sounds so dumb. So anyway, guys, I was trying that one out. Welcome to Happy Hour Hustle. We are talking with another kick-ass women business owner. I'm going to let Mary introduce herself. So say who you are, name of your company, and then also what's your favorite drink. And we judge you if it's not booze, so.
Fair. Well, now I know. So, yeah, as Kim said, my name is Mary DeYoung. I'm the founder of Gray Space Collaborative, and we work with future-minded leaders to cultivate a culture that retains and grows their top talent. And my favorite drink is an old-fashioned.
Nice. What is an old-fashioned? I know there's a cherry in it, right? No?
No, that's a Manhattan.
Oh, well,
it's close,
I'm
though.
not even close.
So an old-fashioned is whiskey bourbon with some bitters, and orange peel, and a big ice cube.
Damn, that's baller. I just like my wine with ice in it. Red wine, to be clear. Okay, so obviously we've got your drink of choice. How did you and I meet? I know, but for listeners, tell them. I'm not asking because I don't remember.
All of a sudden, I'm like, maybe I don't believe. Oh, yeah. So I went to a networking event, and
Michigan Women's
Foundation. Forward.
Michigan Women Forward. Sorry.
Yep. And same initials.
Yeah.
And you said I would totally love to talk, and I think so often people don't actually follow up with people, and I was like, okay. And then let's do it. And we had coffee and sat in your conference room and chatted up and decided we needed to do more of that.
Yeah. So obviously I've been a business owner for 13 years, and I strongly believe that not just should business owners support other business owners, but specifically we like to shine a light on women-owned businesses because we are one. And because I don't think that they get enough attention. And I think that was a little bit part of our conversation. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, we like to do an icebreaker. So this is, what are the 3 things you cannot live without?
3 things I cannot live without. My husband.
Oh, that's nice. Brownie points.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. He's going to have to listen to this.
Yeah, I'll just send it to him and be like, this is for later.
You're mentioned in here.
I would say my dog. I love my dog so much. She brings me so much joy. It's like our nighttime routine where she jumps up on the bed because, believe it or not, my husband does take longer to get ready and go to bed than I do. And so that's like our snuggle time. But she always knows, like, the moment she hears like the faucet turn off, she's like,
I gotta get out of bed.
Go.
Yep.
But that's like our like cuddle time is part of my bedtime ritual. Personal information for all of you. And then I think the last thing that I cannot live without would be community. Just broadly, like connections and relationships. I'm such an extrovert that if I was all of a sudden put in solitary confinement, I would be one of those people that cracked.
Oh, no. I always like to say, like, everyone's like, you're so extroverted. And I'm like, no, I'm an extroverted introvert, if that makes sense. I might have said that backwards. It doesn't matter. Because I do love, but I think for me, I have to have my recharge time, and that's why we have the cabin up north. And it's not a matter of like not working. It's a matter of like, I think just changing up the scenery, and then sometimes like just being away from people. So it's like quiet, and you're just surrounded by the woods and like
nature.
Yeah,
it's so rejuvenating.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So we're going to talk about women being awesome because women are awesome. I would like to say this. Just last night I gave a presentation to Grand Rapids Public Relations Student Society of America. Ooh. And now I know that just rolls right off the tongue. And then last week were you at the Women's Leadership Report? Yes, you were there. Yeah, that's how we like got reconnected again. And both of those, so let me tie this together. You guys you'll get it in a second. So at the Women's Leadership Report, it's a report that comes out every 2 years through Inform Michigan, which is a women's professional organization. And we talk about, we look at public leadership in publicly traded companies as it obviously relates to women and how far we've come. well, this is our second time working on this, and it's a biennial report. So 4 years ago, we were in the same position essentially we still are now. Like, we have not made any really improvement in women in leadership or women in C-suite, essentially. And what I think is interesting about that is most definitely obviously publicly traded companies. So we're talking about like the large companies here in West Michigan. What I think would be even more interesting is if we looked at how many women-owned small businesses there are in our state, because I think that those women that cannot access those executive and CEO positions will often go out and start their own businesses. And I know that's 100% why I started mine, because I was like in my 20s. Nobody's going to take you that seriously. Late 20s, whatever, mid 20s. And I was like, I'm not going to wait around for the next 30 years until I can hopefully get into a leadership position, because no offense, dudes, but one guy deems me like okay to do that, because it's almost like you have to wait for that permission or whatever. Plus, I like to make people uncomfortable, so it was never going to work out for me. And then last night, I talked to all these, PR professionals about women in PR, and I was just telling you this before we started the podcast. Women make up over 75% of the PR industry. 78% of executive positions are filled by men in that industry. The math doesn't make sense. So it's like, what do we do to change this, or how do we? And I think a big part of it is we just go out and we start our own shit. You know, like you've done. I mean, why did you start your business?
A lot of reasons. I think partially because I wanted to do more than what I currently was able to do in the role that I held. While it was a great company and they like wanted me to succeed, they also just didn't have the capacity, right? Like, I had more that I could put out than, the company had the ability to just, kind of eat up. But then also because I wanted to go big. Like you said, I think we so often wait for permission. We so often are like, well, I have to put in my dues. And then I was looking around and going, well, like, he started a company when and he's called a CEO, and he's at the CEO roundtable, and he's not older than me. And so, yes, I'm blonde, and yes, I'm young, but I'm just as smart.
Right.
I have just as many good ideas, and I'll work just as hard, if not harder. And so I decided, well, if I ever want to have a failure lab, I need to fail at something, so I might as well try something.
So I heard you like, amen, first of all. So I heard a statistic the other day. Women will not apply for a job unless they feel like they are 100% qualified.
Yep.
A male will apply for the job if they think they're maybe 50, 60, and I'm pretty sure the percentage is less than that. Like 50 to 60% qualified. Like, we are so hard on ourselves. Like, we are our own worst enemy. I really do truly believe that. Like, it's whether we lack the self-confidence, it's whether it's, we're scared to fail, or everyone around us, we're so concerned with what they think. But failure is a part of life, and every business fails. I mean, whether it's a big failure or a small failure. I mean, I've had some spectacular failures in, my business career.
I also, to your point, I think we're our own worst enemy, but I also believe that when we fail, it matters more.
Yes.
We don't get the same second chances that a man does. We don't. There was an interesting statistic that talked about the glass floor. Did you hear about this? Where it said that children of billionaires actually cannot earn less than their parents, because they'll go out, get venture capital funding, fail miserably, someone will still fund them. And that's just not the same opportunities we have. So we've developed other ways of gaining credit and building up that buffer, and part of that is experience. Part of that is particular degrees and expertise, right? You look at higher education, women are getting more education, and it's because we know that we have to have other things that men don't need to have in order to gain the same opportunities. Which is unfortunate, because I think we also then perpetuate that cycle.
Yes.
Rather than saying, absolutely not, I see you as a young woman leader, and I believe in you, and I'm going to promote you, because there's space for all of us at the top. We don't do that, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it too, like when I've talked on this in the past, I think it's so important that women support other women. I wrote an article with Dr. Adrienne Wallace. That makes me sound smarter when I say it. I knew her before she was a doctor, but and it was about, I think it was literally called Bitches Cutting Bitches, and it was an article about how horrible women can be to each other. Now, I don't think that's the norm. That has not been my experience, but I do think that, to your point about there's room at the top for all of us, because it's so hard for a female to get to the top, they sometimes will hold down other females that are around them. And that is awful.
Yeah.
Like, it's just horrible.
Well, I think it's Supreme Court Justice Bader Ginsburg said, like, they asked her how many women need to be on the Supreme Court, and she said 9.
Yeah.
Every single spot. Like, if you're okay with men filling every single seat up here, then, like, yes, women should fill. And we would be like, oh, really? Like, that's not equitable.
Yeah.
You know? But I think her point is to say, like, there's room for all of us. We don't have to all of a sudden limit the amount of seats that we think are there. And, and it's a hard thing that we all have to work on together.
Yeah.
But I think also in our community, there are some amazing women groups and sponsors. You know, Inform has been a space where I have met incredible women who have said, like, let's grab lunch. Michigan Women's Forward, starting my own business, all of a sudden I went to one space and they're like, you need to join this group. And so, like, GR Boss Babes and Mom Hive and, like, these spaces that are, like, just trying to support other women, like, not all of them are the best fit for every single type of entrepreneur, but there's enough of them, right, that if we can start talking about them and finding each other and doing those things, I think there's a lot of momentum here, especially in Grand Rapids, around entrepreneurial women.
Well, and, you know, I think giving each other kudos and acknowledging each other's success is huge. And, you know, the first time I sat down with you, I was really impressed. Well, you're very eloquent, much more well-spoken than I am, and less swear words. And I think I was really impressed because, again, like, you are young, you know, but you speak so beyond your years, I feel like. And that's impressive to me. And, like, what your business is doing, which you need to give an example of, because it's, we talked about it pretty extensively, and I want people to really, really understand, because it's something that's very important to me. So maybe give an example of what you have done with another client.
Yeah, so what I've worked with a number of spaces, primarily to work on saying it's not just money that it's gonna keep your employees. Like, demographics are changing, right? Younger generations don't look at work the same way, right? So there's a great thing that talked about boomers and builders, right? So our parents and grandparents were people that looked at work as a way to earn a living. And they're the people that have built a lot of these companies, set policy. Millennials and Gen Zs, which are now the new folks coming into the workforce, see it as a hobby. And so that's going to drastically change what work needs to feel like in order for them to stay. And that doesn't always mean more pay. Sometimes it means changing your benefits, but it also really revolves around your culture. Do you actually see people as people, right? We all think it's, you know, I'm all about professionalism, right? I think that it's very helpful to understand sometimes who you are in the workplace and how you conduct yourself maybe looks different than when you're like, party, right? You know?
Going to the new, where did the Knickerbocker for boot night? Boot night.
Yeah.
Well, if you're our age, my age, please do not.
Yeah.
Although I'm pretty sure I could hang. Anyways.
You could totally hang.
Yeah, I think I could.
But you know, and so, but workplaces, to change culture and change behavior is difficult. And so that's what I do is I help people say, like, we often deconstruct our way of thinking, but there's not many consultants or people who help us rebuild and actually put in tangible ways of changing skill development. So that's what I do is I work with people on skill development. An example would be, I was working with a client and they were really innovative and really actually had a great culture, but they had to work with clients consistently who were from vastly different backgrounds and corporate structures and cultures than they were. So oftentimes they would bump into, well, why is this happening and this isn't working? And if you're constantly bumping into your clients or even your coworkers, you spend so much time together, like, that's not going to be fun.
Right.
So we were talking about cultural values and how even taking a degree of separation away from this person is super difficult and I can't stand them and they're not helping, to what cultural value, for example, we come from a very flat organizational structure, maybe they have a very hierarchical one, and when they have the boss inside the brainstorming meeting, what is that doing to my dynamic in my workshop? and how do I now adjust my activities to work for that? And they were able to, the client was able to engage so much more, and they like got a standing ovation after one of their workshops, and they were like, this is not normal. It's like, doesn't happen. But what was different is that they felt like they were seen as themselves. They weren't being forced into an agenda or an activity that was designed and like, yes, it should work, but I'm different.
Yes.
And when we care about our clients and when we care about our coworkers as individuals and as people making that connection, we're gonna want to stay longer. We're gonna want to come back.
And I think too, like, I think people, you can't set it and forget it. You cannot set and forget culture. Like,
Yep.
I did that before with horrible consequences. And then 3 years ago, we implemented the entrepreneur operating system. And I think the best thing that ever did for us, it forced us to define our culture. It forced us to define the type of people we want to work here. And then it made us look at it every single fucking day. Like, every day, look at it. Because if you're not paying attention to it, you're not fostering it, you're not cultivating it, then it is going to start working against you.
It will, but that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Right? You need structures, right? You needed EOS to help you keep that structure. And whether it's pulling an EOS or maybe it's, hiring someone like me who can be that like, no,
Yeah.
don't forget,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is what you said. How is that coming into this conversation? But the beautiful thing about workplaces is that they often have rhythms, rituals, and
Yeah.
routines that you can attach these things to,
Yeah.
right? So if part of your culture is curiosity, right? When you have your annual review, be like, so what are you getting curious about this next
Yeah.
year, right? How is it coming up in your weekly meetings? What did you find out new this week when you're having your managerial one-on-one? How is that influencing your work? What was like a super interesting question that you have, right? There are already things that you have that you can build the skill development onto, and that's what I'm really excited to work with employers.
Well, and I think a big part of it too is like making sure, like you just said, like that, like not the culture, but the structure is there. Or like if you already have like then integrate it into what you already have. It doesn't have to be this thing that is like a ridiculous amount of time or becomes
Right.
uncomfortable because you're suddenly doing like trust falls or something. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why that popped into my
No
head.
one
but-
likes trust falls.
Right? That's also very dangerous. I feel like that's like a workers' comp accident waiting to happen. Okay, back to being a women business owner. We talked a little bit about why it is hard, and I think we're our own worst enemy. Also, I think our age plays against us sometimes as females. What would you say? What would you say has been an instance where you kind of went up against that? And you can be very generic. I don't want to put you like on the spot, but like where you were treated differently because you were a female.
Yeah, I think two immediately come to mind is that I'm asked all the time how old I am.
Ah, yes.
No one else asks men that
No,
in the room.
I don't care how old they are.
And, I know immediately I'm either in a room where they're like, you sound smart, but you look like you shouldn't know all of that. So now I'm confused and I'm trying to make sense of like what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and putting it together. And I'm like, or you could just accept that I'm also young, blonde, and smart.
Yeah.
Like these things can coincide.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is that there's been spaces where it was assumed I didn't have the experience without actually me being able to pitch my experience.
Yep.
Right? It was like, well, you don't have that like in this clear role. And I was like, oh, but I have so many more roles that you don't know about. I am a mentor to through 311 Youth Housing, and I have 3 amazing 20-year-old young men who live with me, who I'm basically not their older sister, parentified older sister who gets to tell them a thing or two once in a while. But we have to create a culture. I've had to talk about eviction. If you come to me and say, well, you don't have like, X, Y, or Z managerial experience, I'll be like, well, tell me exactly what you think a manager does. They help people grow. They help them identify, those goals. They give them the tools, help them remove barriers when they don't need to do that, have conversation when they're not meeting their marks, and then have to balance the needs of the team versus an individual. They're like, absolutely. I said, yeah, I've done that.
I used to have to bring, I had a good friend that was in the business world or whatever, and there would be times where I knew that, like, because when I first started out, I was working a lot with, like, in more industrial type companies. So it was sometimes it was great to be a female in that capacity. Other times it was tougher. And I remember actually asking him if he would just come to meetings with me and just sit there and be the guy in the room. And they would direct every single question to him.
Yep.
I would then answer every single question. But like the fact that I had to eat, and it's changed a lot, and it hasn't changed enough in some instances. But those were ways that I was like, I gotta have a workaround. I guess I'll just bring a dude with me. Like, and the amount of times I get asked, and I wrote an interesting article on this on smallbizmusings.com. About like sexism, and I've gotten asked, how old are you? Are you married?
Do you have kids?
Yep. Do you have kids? And I'm like, no.
Are you gonna have kids?
Yes. And are you gonna have kids? No. And then I'll get the response, well, you still have time. And so I was like, no, my uterus fell out, or no, like I literally mentioned a grizzly bear ripped it out, but that's in my blog. It's really quite funny if you read it in context. But my point was, it's such a ridiculous question to be asking, but it's also such a norm in society that the only thing that we can control is how we respond to it. And I think I spent a lot of years being angry that I got those questions, and I had to get to a point where this is an opportunity for you to teach. This is an opportunity for you to change the conversation. So do that. But don't expect that others are going to necessarily know, or now in some instances, yeah, you should know better. But, you know, I try not to see it as like a negative. I try not to see it as something bad in another person. I just try and see it as, well, it's an opportunity for you to change the dialogue around this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I talk about in creating culture is like, how do you, right, like, shift your brain from system one of like, I'm curious, right? Like they're like, oh, do you have kids, right? Because they're like, of course, this is what I ask. And especially in a West Michigan culture where faith is a huge aspect of things, right? They may ask you even about that, and it's thinking and pausing for a second and saying, maybe not the best question, right?
Yeah.
But that's again a skill, and especially people in privilege have not had to practice that skill because it doesn't impact them. And so, you know, I often try to come from it from that perspective as well, of like, maybe they haven't had as much practice. Maybe no one said. And this is the other thing that I've learned as well, is that when you build trust, it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, but like once you've built relationship, they'll still listen.
Yeah.
And you have the opportunity to shift that narrative and to say, you know, I know this wasn't your intention, but here's how that question came off. And I know that you're in a lot of spaces where you're bumping into people very similar to me, or, you know, in these other spaces, and knowing that you're not someone who wants to come off that way, I want to make you aware, because I know you want to.
You say that so much better than me. I just use like excessive sarcasm, like while the grizzly bear, because like I often come off as a bit abrasive and bitchy. I know it's surprising. And so like my best defense, I think, is to be self-deprecating, and which is also something like, that's a whole different conversation that we'll, you know, another podcast, but also like to turn it into humor, because I feel like through that I can show them it's a question that they shouldn't be asking, but also I feel like I'm also at the same time kind of hopefully putting them at ease, because I am using humor to diffuse,
but like be aware.
So
well, and I think, you know, and I really appreciate diverse styles of addressing these things, because everyone has different ways of feeling about those things. And for example, if it happens like right off the bat, I'll usually be like, old enough, you know, or like say something and kind of like move past it, or and it really throws them for a loop when they're like, do you have kids? And I say 20-year-olds, and then they're like really then confused. Either you look fantastic, or you had a child when that was really inappropriate.
What's going on?
One of these two things, and their mind just like spins and spins. And then I explain, but
or just don't. That would be my leave it. Just walk away from the conversation.
You know, but I really value that, because we're all so different, and we have to appreciate other people's ways of doing things, right? So I really appreciate when people can use humor. I just don't always come off well. When I do that. And well, see, you know what works for you, and I know what works for me. I mean, I am very awkward sometimes, so I just had to kind of work that into everything, because it's obvious, and I don't want to like Yeah.
So I know, like, I'm not always going to come off the smoothest.
Yeah.
But I have different, it doesn't mean I'm not intelligent. It just means, like, I am a very awkward individual. And so there's just different ways I have to incorporate that in the conversation.
Well, and I think women specifically we need to be better at that.
Yeah.
Like, owning who we are like, both as ourselves and in business.
Yeah.
Right? So, because we won't look like men.
No.
We will not get to the same positions the same way they did. We will not have power and influence the same way they do, right? We talked about this. We said, like, men often have power bestowed upon them through positions of power and influence, whereas women have figured out, like, I still have just as much influence, but I influence from the side, I influence from behind, and you're able to do that when you're also comfortable with who you are.
100%. Before we go into the rapid fire round, don't worry, it's not that scary.
I was like,
what would you say to other women who are either, looking to take, like, the next step in their career or how they want to start a business?
One of the things that has just been the most amazing thing for me is other women building me up. And so the advice I would give is that when you are meeting someone and they say, let's grab coffee, don't assume it's a platitude.
Yeah.
Actually reach out and have coffee. Some of the most amazing mentors that I've had are because I actually followed up. I had questions for them. I made it worth their while. And there's so many people who are willing to do that, but we have to be willing to actually take the initiative and say, I actually took your business card, and you follow up within a week. Like, just do it, because you never know who's going to open that opportunity, who's going to give you that good advice, and it helps to have a variety of voices so that you can figure out, like, which one works best for you.
And I think my biggest piece of advice is to continually push yourself out of your comfort zone, build your network, invest in your network, because that is going to be what gets you wherever you are in life.
Yeah.
And also just do it.
Yeah.
Like, stop doubting yourself, or doubt yourself, but, like, fake it, man.
Totally.
Like, yeah.
I had lunch with someone the other day, and they were like, I talk to people, and they always seem to get kind of tongue-tied, and they don't know what to say, and you don't really seem to do that. And I was like, that's hilarious, because 2 questions ago, you asked me this question, and I was like, I actually don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I had no idea. You totally made it sound super confident. And granted, that takes practice.
Yeah.
But there are also places you can go to learn these skills. If you're like, I need to learn how to speak with influence or to have more communication, practice.
Yeah.
There are totally spaces that you can go and do that.
I think the biggest thing is to be comfortable with yourself and not try and present yourself as someone you're not.
Yeah.
Like, you just know who you are. I think if you spend the time getting to know who you are and you are unapologetically yourself, like, everything else falls into place. I really do think that. And I mean, nobody's confident. Everybody fails. Just know, like, I think when I started 834, I was like, no idea what I was doing. And then I realized, hey, other small businesses also don't have any idea what they're doing. But you tend to think like you're the only one going through what you're going through, who's experienced it. And that's just not the case.
Most people don't actually know what they're doing.
Oh, nobody does.
And they're just figuring it out. And then when they sound super smart, it's because they're looking in hindsight, saying, oh, this is what happened.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Because I could have said, because I'm a super practical person, and normally I would be like, this isn't practical to start your own business. This is a terrible idea. But I was like, no, I really believe that we need to do this for our community. We need to have workplaces that are better for their employees, not only because it's nicer for the employees, because we have a huge wealth gap, because we have all of these things in our city that could be solved with employers helping their employees stay longer, but also employers need their employees to stay longer because they can't keep hiring, they can't keep onboarding and doing this
it's awful.
Because then you don't want to invest because you expect them to leave. And so I just really believed, I've worked in nonprofit and for-profit, and just seeing that nonprofits provide that stability and opportunity, which is so essential, but it's jobs that are going to change somebody's life. And if I can be a part of working with employers to find the best employees in the spaces they might not expect it, and find employees an opportunity to actually find stability and grow their career, that's a win.
Huge win. All right, rapid fire. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Favorite book?
I thought I was ready.
It's not like we're going to buzz you if you don't get the answer right away.
This is
You're out of here.
And you're done. Yeah, no, Left, Right, Christ was a fascinating book.
Ooh, interesting.
So they're two people of faith, one very, very conservative, one very, very liberal, and they talk about how their mutual faith informs their political perspective. And especially in our political climate, I found it fascinating.
Damn, I want to read that.
That was really interesting.
Yeah. Favorite food?
Indian food.
Favorite place to hang out in GR?
Ooh. Recently it's been Marcona on Lion. It's a really small little restaurant, and it happens to be right around the block, or Buffalo Traders. I like small spaces.
Have you been to Mexo?
I have been to Mexo.
So good.
They do have fantastic beverages.
Yeah.
I like Buffalo Traders because they have good whiskeys.
Of course, yeah. That's because you're a baller. Favorite GR patio?
Ooh. Oh, I know this one. Not Donkey, because while it's fantastic, I don't like to sit by other people. I'm an extrovert, but I like my own table.
Right.
Yeah. So the upstairs of Rockwell.
Yes.
I really love that.
Patio.
Yep.
Favorite color?
White, because it has all the colors.
So weird. God, you're like Brie.
It just means that I don't have to pick. But that's not actually true. I kind of like a sage green.
All right, I can get behind that.
Or a bright
right.
teal.
Yeah, because you know it's all about me, so yep. I approve of that color choice. Favorite place to vacation?
I love the mountains. Like either East Coast or West Coast mountains. Any.
Beach or cabin?
Depends if it's the winter here.
Right.
I'm gonna go for the beach.
Yeah, right.
But probably any other time, I'd probably say the cabin because I love trees.
Fair. Do you have like a favorite, like somebody that mentor or somebody that you respect, like female leader?
Yeah, can I name a couple?
Yes.
Okay, so my mom,
Yep.
Shirley Hoekstra, she's the vice president of the Council of Christian Colleges and Universities, and she just is a baller.
Yeah.
I'm so fortunate to have one in my family. Also, Deb Phillips has been just a great sponsor for me, and as well as Shannon Cohen, just killing it.
She's been on this podcast.
I'm also pretty sure that everyone and their sister thinks that Shannon Cohen is like their friend, and I'm not under any assumption about that. But
we're friends. Did you hear that?
We're friends, Shannon. Shannon, we're friends. No, but she is one of those people that just kind of like plucked me when I was younger and was like, "Come speak to my leadership class," and I wasn't even a leader.
She has legit built this community of like her business is building up other women.
It is.
It is badass.
And she's amazing at
it. And she is the most gracious person in the world.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, you're not that nice.
I sent her an email and then she called me and she was like, I'm just gonna give you 3 things, and I was like, okay. Feverishly taking notes. Yeah. But no, those are I think 3 women, and I think one of the things is that they've been sponsors.
Yep.
Right, as well as mentors. And then there are some also other just amazing women who are my age, right? And I think that that's the other key thing. You do not have to wait until you're, like arrived to sponsor and introduce people. So I was at a networking event, and they were like, I'm going to introduce you. And they just made 3 introductions for me, and they're my age. So we don't have to wait till we're...
Well, you are amazing. Oh, how do people find out more information about you?
So many ways. So you can go to grayspacecollaborative.com. That's my website. You can follow my Instagram, which is grayspace.marydyoung. I'm also on Facebook. I will also be hosting for women, if you're interested, a Strength of Women workshop on March 6th. It's on Eventbrite. Just type in Strength of Women, and we're going to be using the Gallup StrengthsFinder tool to talk
amazing.
About.
I'm going to be in Cabo.
Well, next time.
Yeah.
I know you said you get back that same day. But it'll be a half-day workshop as an opportunity to explore, like, how do you actually leverage your strengths to be an authentic leader? That's
amazing. I love it. You're the best.
Those are all the ways. Thank you so much for having me on here, Kim.
Oh, my God. Thanks for, coming here today and showing up. Well, everyone, that was another edition of Happy Hour Hustle, talking badass women, which is something we all are. I guess we'll see you on the download. Is that what I usually say? See you on the download. I feel like I say something before that. Oh, you've been hustled. You've officially been hustled. Then also see you on the download, because I think it's funny and my staff thinks it's super nerdy and I don't care. So I will see you on the download.